Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first official PLC. I'm Zandra Bell McRoy. I'm your virtual PLC lead for 6 through 12 band. And today we're going to cover classroom setup, favorite lessons and activities, as well as tried and true strategies that have worked for me in my classroom. I've taught middle and high school band, and I have certain things that have served me well in my career. So I hope that I'm sharing some things today with you that will help you on your musical journey through this crazy world of music education. Let's jump right in. So, first things first, we're going to start with classroom setup. And I've approached this in a different way. I want to think about classroom setup, not just physically, but the way we set up the learning, the teaching and learning process in our classroom. So I have certain non-negotiables that that are tried and true for me. The way I structure learning, I'm going to go through that, and as well as connecting the dots, how to put all of this together, all of this theoretical gibberish together to actually structure some real life learning. And I'll offer you some sample lesson plans to help you on that. Okay, so let's jump right in. My non negotiables. The first thing is to teach the curriculum. Now, the curriculum can be defined by the concepts, skills, and repertoire. It's so important to break those three things down and extract each one because they have to have conceptual knowledge in order to navigate the repertoire. And they have to have a certain skill set in order to navigate the repertoire. So without certain concepts and skills, the students won't have what they need to navigate the repertoire, which is what we all think about when we think about band. So when you teach conceptually, you basically teach broad concepts instead of just teaching this is piano, this is forte, this is concert B flat, this is concert F sharp. Instead of doing that, we're teaching these broad overarching concepts and situating all of these different things that they're going to need to be able to decode and decipher in the music as they come across it. So there's a certain level of conceptual knowledge, which is really in some ways abstract knowledge that has to be internalized by the students in order for them to decode the musical language. I hope that makes sense. Skills-based teaching, they have to have certain things they can actually do. So, things that they can actually do, scales, scalar studies, arpeggiated studies, rhythm studies. They have to have certain skills, things that they can actually do. You put what they know and what they can do together, and there you have repertoire. They can decode it completely. They can not only decode it, but they can also execute. All right. Conceptual knowledge helps them decode, skills help them execute. And then finally, a spiral curriculum. I believe that when students enter the band program in sixth grade, it should be 6 through 12. That's something we've been working very hard at in every school district I have ever worked in, ever. It's really important to try to get the kids and the parents and the directors thinking about band as a 6 through 12 activity. All right. And so the complexity of the concepts and the skills simply just increase. It just gets more and more complex as students move through the grades, but they are learning the same concepts just with more depth and breadth as they get through your 6 through 12 band program. Now, breaking down conceptual teaching these large concepts, they can be derived from the six elements of music. That's the way I break them down most of the time: rhythm, melody, harmony, form, expression, and style. Now, this is part of my training. This is what I do. You break things down the way you like, but this is just my training and how I work through building these large scale concepts. And once you have these large scale concepts, then you determine how they align with the standards. So you want to make sure that you are still teaching from our standards, but using these concepts to guide things that the students need to know, linking the concept to the standard. And that allows you to speak in the language that an administrator can understand. Now, skills based teaching. You use the standards to help determine what skills they must attain. You have to know what they have to be able to do. If it's called middle school, middle school band, intermediate, then it's very clear in the standards what they need to be able to do conceptually and skills based. And so you take those standards and you extract all of those concepts and skills that they need to have. The standards are very useful. And the new Georgia Standards of Excellence are incredibly pertinent to what we do. It's all about the performance side, and it relates to that so well. So I would highly encourage everyone to use those standards as a jumping off point if you need one. And then you align this with your method book. I would highly advise everyone to find supplementary materials to help teach these skills and not depend solely on the method book. Method books can be advertised oftentimes as a curriculum. That's actually a little tricky and a little bit dangerous. A method book is a resource. And so, what you want to make sure is that you use it as a resource and you can use it as a guide to help you structure learning, but making sure that you take the initiative to go out and find other, you know, other materials, other resources to help reinforce these skills is a wonderful thing. And even using different parts of the method book. Lots of method books have a whole nother set of studies in the back of them that may be from a former method book. It's a great way to expose the students to different resources. Okay, so don't just depend on the method book. It can be a little dangerous, but it's better than nothing. So, setting up the rehearsal space to maximize learning. Um, I've heard a lot of people talk about how they set their chairs and all of these things. Well, I have certain things that have to happen in my band room. As you can see here, my band room is a really big space. We have a very high ceiling. It's a pretty large band room. I'm really lucky. We have a full percussion room with lots of storage. We have a low brass room, a woodwind room, a guard storage room, two practice rooms, and a drum set room. And so we have a lot of space. So, what I like to do is configure the room depending on what we're doing. So you see here, this was a small ensemble that came and played for our students. And so we set it up as a theater. Here, this is Mr. Adams from the University of Georgia working with our percussion students at a master class. And so we set it up in a master class setup in an arc. For those of you that teach middle school, the space in the band room is really important. The chairs are very important. Now, I know now we're having to think about keeping them 6 feet apart and all of that. But before, it was really important for me to keep distance between the students, not too much, but a couple of feet between each chair because it was really important for them to learn how to keep their instrument case neatly by the right side of their chair, how to have the space for me to come in and help them with their posture, their embouchure, whatever. And then oftentimes I would have an aisle down the middle of the room so that I could continuously move around. That may not be possible now with the requirements for distance between the chairs, but it may be a good idea for as we move back into a more normalized band setting. And that may not be anytime soon. But when you are configuring your space, think about what it is you need to do for the students and what do they need. And that's how you configure the space. If your students are very chatty, you may consider not having such deep arcs because when they're just looking straight ahead, they're looking at someone in front of them and they may not be paying attention to you. So you may want to go with a shallow arc, which is what I do in my classroom. Very shallow, shallow arc so that when they are in rest position, they're almost, it's impossible for them to not look at me. They can't be looking at each other. If they are looking at each other, their head is turned at least a little bit. So it keeps them tuned into the front of the room, to the podium. So that's just a little tip for younger teachers that are looking for ways to set up their room to help with behavior. I think it's really important to always have a word wall. I had a former student that was, is an art major. And so she did this drawing here of the musician playing, and all of the notes are coming out of his trumpet, as you can see there. And this is just my word wall. Everyone can have, for me, we just put them all up because we have one big bulletin board that we use. But you can always, when I taught middle school, I just used a few words at a time, our words of the week. And so it's all up to you. Now, another essential is the rehearsal slide. And we'll get into the importance of a rehearsal slide and why it's a non-negotiable for me in my classroom, because I just like the structure of it. And we'll talk more in depth about that and how it can help behaviorally as well. And then this is our virtual classroom. Like many of you, I've been virtual all school year. We've been virtual since March, and we've had to create very interesting, eye-catching rooms. So this is the last slide that I use every day with my ticket out the door. This is our mindfulness, our mindful moment room. And this is our rehearsal slide room with the rehearsal for the day, the rehearsal slide for the day. So everything kind of stays as close to the band room as we can get it, but we make all of these different rooms a little bit different. It's kind of fun. I enjoy it. I've gotten Bitmoji crazy. You will see later in the presentation, but it's a fun way to engage the kids visually and to get them interested in your virtual classroom. So let's just talk a little bit about building instructional time. There are certain things that happen when you are thinking of building the instructional time: how the students enter the classroom, the pre-instructional time behaviors that you want them to present, bell ringers, practice targets, do nows, etc. Instructional time, what happens during the meat and potatoes part of the class, your close down process, how do you end your class, and how do students leave the class to get out the door, summaries, all of these things. So let's start with pre-instructional time behaviors. One thing that we like to do in our band room is called purposeful listening. And of course, everyone talks about this, having the music playing when they enter the room on a repeat. We have it on loop. And that purposeful listening is not just for them to have music while they're getting ready. They have to come in and check their practice targets. They check their practice targets, and it's typically connected to what's playing. So it's either airplay this, or look and listen with the recording, or look over measures 1 through 13 of this piece and know that that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, this is an interesting topic. Do you want your students to play individually when they come in, or do you want them to simply airplay? Everyone has their own opinions. When I taught middle school and with my younger bands in high school, I do not allow them to play on their own. I like for them to come in and airplay only, simply because they don't quite know how to warm up effectively on their own yet. So I don't want them coming in and creating bad habits. With my wind ensemble, I allow them to come in and play. They know how to warm up. They've been taught how to warm up, and that saves us time so that when I get on the podium, we're jumping right into our group warm up with we're a lot more aggressive with the warm up because they've already done some of that on their own. Now, building skills time. This is a lot of the part of class that kids like to call the warm up. And a lot of administrators see it as a warm up, but it's more than a warm up. It's actually a warm up and an introduction to the work period. We like to stretch, and I explained to the kids that the stretching gets them in tune with their bodies, lets them know where they're carrying tension, lets them really tune in and figure out. It's almost like a body scan. If you're into SEL stuff, it's almost like a body scan, and we tie it into our mindfulness. So a lot of times we'll have them do the stretching and then we'll have a mindful moment where maybe 45 seconds to a minute they're doing a breathing exercise in their bubble, and then they're ready to start class. They're in the mindset. It's really important. Breathing. This is our new reality. How many of you are actually doing breathing exercises if you're face to face? It's easy to do when you're virtual because they're virtual, they're at home, they're breathing in their own house. But when they come to school, are we doing breathing exercises? I would love to hear what everyone is doing because of our new situation with our pandemic. But I will not be doing breathing exercises with them in person. That's a personal preference. That's just me. But it has made a huge difference in, I believe, having talked to several band director friends, it has made a huge difference in the lung capacity and the support that the kids have with their tone right now because we're not doing as many breathing exercises. We do mouthpiece buzzing with middle schoolers. I did a lot of just head joints, mouthpieces and barrels, mouthpieces only, everybody buzzing to get that embouchure set, get that air moving, and then woodwinds put it on, brass continue to buzz, match pitch with the woodwinds and the percussion, and then we move back into the long tones with everybody playing. Now I do that with high school. They buzz, and sometimes they play, buzz, play. Sometimes they just buzz and play. It just depends on what they're sounding like or what they sounded like the day before. Long tones, we do lots of long tones and several different warm up activities. Don't skip that. A lot of people want to skip it because it's boring, but it's so important. And it playing in unison is so helpful in the band room because we can't play chords in tune if we can't play unison in tune. So it's really important. Don't neglect that. Now, as we get ready to start introducing concepts to our students, this is where we call this in our school the work period. This is where kids are getting in there. We're introducing these concepts and they're getting in there and they're getting the hands dirty and they're learning how to navigate the music using the musical language that we're using, in internalizing the conceptual knowledge that we're giving them and working on those skills. So I call it the picnic basket approach to teaching, where you're giving them all of these different tools and they just pack them up in their picnic basket, close the picnic basket, and move over to the music, sit down, unpack their picnic basket in a whole new location, and they're ready to go because they've gotten all of this knowledge. And so that makes the navigation of the music so much easier and so much more enjoyable when you're not having to teach them the music. You're able to be a true conductor and a true band director where you're just putting the pieces together. I think that orchestra teachers are the best at this, and a lot of them have that Suzuki training. So it seems that they just have this on lock. I don't, I just envy orchestra teachers. They seem to just do this very effortlessly. So I think we should take a page out of their book and really think about teaching broad concepts, teaching skills, and then allowing them to just move over to the music with all of this knowledge, and always make these connections from what you learned in your warm-up time or your book work time and what you're trying to play right now in the music. If you make those connections, soon they will start making those connections on their own without your help. Moving on. All right, so a sample plan. This is a kind of a sample with how I would approach a new concept in the classroom. And the overarching concept that we're going to be talking about is key signature. And so we always try to start with the paper pencil approach, and that's the music theory and ear training approach, so that they can see it. It's concrete, it's not abstract, it is concrete, and they have to think of nothing else but the concept. That's it. And then we move on to the music approach. When you're doing the music approach, you want to make sure that you're connecting the dots from what you just did in music theory and anything music theory, any book, any method, web-based anything is great. Just teach them theory. Um, it's important to make those connections. It's important to connect the dots for them and include the language, include the vocabulary, talk in the language so that they talk in the language. If we speak in the language, they will do the same. And then transfer that over to the repertoire. Transfer those internalized concepts and those learned skills that they've worked on in a low stake setting, which is the method book, is completely unison, and it makes things less scary. So when they go to the repertoire, they just carry that over. Now, is it a magic bullet? No, but does it really help? Yes. You still have to work really hard because there's still middle and high schoolers, but it really does help make the learning more sound. So here I just have four sample lessons, and they're all the same. They're all key signature lessons, but they go from beginner level all the way to mastery. So I'll just show you the beginner first. So you see here, we have just a simple beginner lesson. You have the first activity, which is the music theory lesson, reviewing the piano keyboard, reviewing the sharps, flats, and naturals, because essentially we've already done this work. This is just a snapshot lesson. And then going over the major scale, how to build one, what it does, all of the things, and how it affects the notes you play in your music. And then you go into your method book. And this is just an example from one of the books that we may use, but every book has all of these. And you just go through, you have them mark all the sharps and all the flats based on the key signature. And then you go over those answers. And then you have them work through the line, making sure they're playing all the right notes and all the right rhythms. I do a 3-step approach on level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is notes and rhythms. What's on the staff. Level 2 is what's above the staff. That's going to be articulations. And then level 3 is what's below the staff, and that's our dynamics. I did not come up with that on my own. I got that from Dr. Strauss, who is the conductor of the Terra Winds. So thank you, Dr. Strauss, for that. And I've been using it for years. So that just shows you, and then you take that and you put it onto the repertoire. And you have a check for understanding here. It's a great time to use some pair shares or some pair share squared, and then do a quick vocabulary quiz at the end. These links are live. You're more than welcome to check them out and steal them if you want, because I'm pretty sure I stole them myself. Now let's move back to the presentation. And so here we have a mastery lesson. And it's the same concept. It's the same concept, but it's just going to be a little more fleshed out, a lot more complex. And so you see here is the same structure. You're going through the music theory lesson, you put it on the method book, then you take that method book and work it so that they can, interact with that concept. Interact with that concept in a musical setting, and then you transfer it over to the music. And so these lessons are the same, but they are just modified for complexity. Now, let's go back to the presentation. Like I said before, all of these links are live, so feel free to use them and modify them to fit your needs. So these are just some of my favorite lessons. I have done, we do Squilt presentations with our students, and that's the super quiet, uninterrupted listening time. And we have these once a week. And then we also have our meaningful music listening journal. That's just one type. We do lots and lots of listening journals. So I'll just show you here. This is our Squilt presentation that we use with our students, and we talk about what does Squilt mean, and we take them through, and everything's linked as well as the listening journal Now, remember, we are virtual, so everything has to be linked and everything has to be ready for virtual learning. Now, our meaningful music listening journal was something we started in the spring where we're typically giving them music to evaluate. But we decided to actually have them submit music that is important to them. And the only requirement is that it is school appropriate. And so they have to explain to us why this music is so important to them. And then we have one where they build a storyline or a screenplay, if you will, to a piece of music. And all of these are in forms. So we just push them out to the students, whether they're in person or virtual. And they do those. I also have paper copies for students that don't have devices. Yeah. So another activity that I've really enjoyed, I've done this with middle school, it's listening maps, and I can show you some examples. So our listening maps here, we did one for Molly on the Shore, and then we did one for Rhapsody in Blue. And the students just tell me what they hear, what pictures they see, what colors they see. And I just printed off all of these different pictures for them and gave them a box of supplies and said, go. And there are, they just did what they wanted to do with it. And these were not band students, these were general music students. But I've used this with band as well, and it's really, really effective to get them thinking about the music, to get them thinking about the music. All right. And then finally, technique challenges. I love to do these. You would be surprised at how intense high school students still get about competitions between the brass and the woodwinds and the percussion, and doing scalar studies and thirds and technical studies and all of those little studies that we have to do. Those are skills we have to build. Doing those can get a little bit repetitive and a little boring for the kids. So we have technique challenges once a week, and who can hold on the longest. I used to do the knockout game, but then I found that students would get knocked out and didn't learn how to just recover. So we stopped doing the knockout game and just started doing who can hold on. And then we'll do it again. Did you hold on one note longer than you did before? And so we're trying to get them to learn how to stay in the game. So even if you make a mistake, can you jump in? Can you recover? So we're building a lot of things and they really enjoy it. It's very strange that high schoolers still get into that, but they do. And then this past winter, we had a virtual concert, and there's a recording of our virtual concert. And it was surprisingly really fulfilling. It was difficult. It was a lot of work. It was very stressful to put together, but it worked. And we used a free program called Upbeat Perform. It is free. And you have to pay for a non-watermark recording, but we just used the free program and it was a great experience. And so we will probably do that again in the spring because we're still virtual at this point. So we're just going to talk a little bit at this point about what has worked for me. Let me be clear, this works for me in my classroom over the years. I started teaching in 2002, and I got my master's in 2006, and I got my doctorate in 2014. So I can only talk about what works for me and people that I talk to a lot. So don't take this as this is what you have to do to be successful. Take this as this is one teacher's um, set of strategies that work for her. Okay. All right. So let's jump right in. Why use a rehearsal plan? Now, I told you we were going to talk about this. Now, I stole this. I did not create it all on my own. I stole this template and tweaked it for my purposes. I went to a clinic at Midwest, and one of the takeaways was a template, and I stole it and I use it, and I use it in different colors, and I use it in different fonts, and I use it for marching band and for concert band and everything. And it does several things. We project this on the screen, as the students are walking in. It has a timer on it. You can see here, there's a timer. And that's how long they have to get ready. And so we hit that timer and let's go. We have to be ready. We've done all the things. By the time that 5 minutes hits, we're starting with our full group warm up at 5 minutes. So why use it? This is why. It prepares students for the learning that's about to take place. It helps the percussionists to set up all of the necessary materials that they need for that day. It is so important because they will ask a million questions. What are we playing today? What are we playing today? What are we playing today? What do I need to get out? Keep them from talking to you by having it up on the board. They ask me, what do I need? I just point, and once we got through a couple of months of just the point, there were never any more questions. I do this for marching band as well so that they don't have to ask me a lot of questions. It also, cuts down on the number of questions that all the students ask you. It pulls the students into the mindset of learning by laying out the tasks. They're very clear, and the goals. They know exactly what direction you're headed in for that day. It communicates what they will be working on the next day. So they know if I haven't looked over that hot spot that we talked about yesterday in Sabre and Spurs, we're going to have a problem. So I need to go home and look at that because we're doing that tomorrow. And then the music is linked in there. So all of these links, not on this, but in the real listening journal, are live so that you click them. And so, for example, Shenandoah is a look and listen. And so I go over here and I click on that because that's the piece we may have not worked on as much. So we want to click on that and just do a look and listen. So fingers and music only. So once you get your stuff out, sit down, get your music out, fingers and music and listening only. Another thing that we do is mindfulness. Like I said, we have our mindful moment every single day. Why practice mindfulness in the band room? It does help students get in a mindset for learning and allows them to shake off the day that they have had prior to coming to band. Let's be real. Some kids have a really rough life, and sometimes school can be very difficult for teenagers and young adolescents. And so they need to shake that off so that they can really enjoy the space that they're in. Because for most kids, the band room is their safe space. It oxygenates the brain and it does give them more energy and focus and clarity because they have to do some deep breathing. And it helps the band director focus and quiet their mind. I do the mindful moment with the kids every day so that I can pull myself together because people that know me well know that I can be wound a little tight. So you got to calm me down sometimes. Not that I'm like frantic, it's just that my brain goes really fast and I don't want to have that type of energy on the podium because it influences the way the kids learn. And then ultimately, having a little mindful moment will keep this unfortunate event here from happening because there have been days when all of us have felt like that could clearly happen in our classroom. So just saying. And so this is totally my husband and all his fault because he got me talking about the energy in the room. The way he talks to his kids is amazing. And so I stole this from him and it really has helped and it's changed the way I interact with my students in the classroom. The whole idea of the energy in the room, getting the kids to buy into the idea that there is a certain energy in the room and our behaviors influence that energy. And if we have a chaotic energy in the room, we're going to get a chaotic product. It's not going to be refined, is not going to be a meaningful learning experience. So you want to model the type of energy you want to have in your classroom. So if you want your classroom to be calm and quiet, you should be calm and quiet. If you're stressed and you're frantic, the students will mirror that energy. You want band to be a time for them to feed their soul, not to get wound up and have a lot of negative self-talk and feel really amped and mad at themselves. You want them to be in a space that is accepting and feeling filled up. You want band to give them something, not take away. Now, if you speak loudly, the students will do the same. I just don't talk loud in life. So that's just how I roll. It's just my natural personality, but I don't talk really loudly in my band room unless I have to. And those are not good days. Those are flip the desk days, but those happen very rarely. But the students will mirror your behaviors. And something that my husband says all the time, and I just stole it. I don't like the energy in the room right now. And he will stop. That energy shift has happened. He announces that I don't like the energy in the room right now. He steps off the podium and he puts the ball in the student's court. And that's exactly how I do it in my classroom. I don't do a lot of yelling. I don't do screaming. I don't do all of that. No one has time for that. No one has the energy for that. You need all of your energy for that conceptual teaching that we were talking about earlier. So, and all the other jobs that you have, mom, dad, um, counselor, custodian, all the things that you have to do, treasurer. I mean, all the things that you have to do as a band director. You need to save that energy for that. So putting that ball in their court is really important, letting them know that you have an expectation in your classroom and they are not meeting it. So here you go. I'll give you the space to figure out how to get back on track so that we can do the work we want. Because at the end of the day, we are really trying to help them learn to have self-control and how to behave in a professional way, in a professional setting. And so you would not yell and scream in a professional setting. So let's teach them how to behave as a professional. Okay. And so that's all I have for today. I really hope that this has been helpful for you. I hope that you are walking away with a renewed sense of commitment to conceptual teaching. And if you have any questions or want to discuss anything, there will be topics on the discussion board, but just feel free to reach out to me using that Godot Community 6 through 12 band discussion board. Make sure that you join so that you don't miss any updates. And I can't wait to have some really robust conversations about your non-negotiables and uh, what you do in your classroom to make things work and how you approach teaching and learning. So let's share ideas with each other. This is a unique opportunity for us to take down all of those walls that are between us because we are singletons most of the time in our buildings and share some ideas and have some helpful banter about teaching and learning. And finally, our contact stuff is here for the social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter are all here for the Department of Ed. This is the YouTube channel. I've also linked in our Fine Arts Facebook page, and which is newly updated, and the Fine Arts Twitter account is linked there. So reach out to us, follow us, and I look forward to robust discussions. I love to say that. And I hope that you are having a wonderful, wonderful February. And I look forward to seeing you soon with our next PLC. Have a great day. Bye-bye.